And welcome back to the Ad Podcast. We have an exciting guest for you guys today. Jonathan King is the head of growth at Quality Meats, a rapidly expanding independent creative agency based in Chicago. He's also worked at esteemed shops like VMLY&R, DDB and Deutsch, and his portfolio spans major clients like Kraft Heinz, Molson, Coors, and Capital One. Jonathan, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to be here.
For sure. Well, I know we've had to reschedule a few times, but I think maybe I got to benefit from that because I know you guys have been in the news recently. So before we get into that, though, I want to start with your origin story / bio. I know I just hit some of the highlights on the resume side, but where'd you grow up? What'd you study? And why'd you decide to get into the advertising industry?
Yeah, born and raised in the LA area. And, I went to college at Pepperdine and I thought I was going to be a plastic surgeon. That was my, that was my goal and dream. And then I started taking those classes and I realized I am not passionate about this. This is not my calling. And, I was always fascinated with creativity and just the idea of being able to produce an idea and that can move people to action, that can move people to emotion. An idea can be so powerful. And we see that in culture echoed throughout the course of time. Of creativity has been such a driver of so much of the world. And, as I got into a little bit of that pivot moment in my life when I realized, okay, plastic surgery is not going to be it. I was like, marketing is kind of the perfect intersection between creativity and business, right? You're using ideas to help transform, business and grow and attract new buyers, keep your current buyers, and it's such a fascinating world to me. And I love that every brand is a different challenge. And I really took that spirit. I studied integrated marketing communications and I started interning at an agency, and I've been at 8 agencies in the span of my career. And really, it's been such a wild and fun ride. And it's the thesis of all of it has been the ability to touch brands that have such staying power with consumers, but also the ability to really do some amazing work, right? There's so many brands out there, and a lot of brands like to fall to the middle. They like to be safe. And I've had the privilege of working on such an amazing set of brands that have a high caliber of work.
I love that. So, we talked about some big names on the resume list. Quality Meats has definitely made noise, but it's, decidedly an indie shop. So, what made you decide to make the move to independent? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? How's it going so far?
Yeah, the industry has had a seismic shift. Holding companies used to dominate, all the clients and the brands, and they owned all the scopes. And what's been really challenging is creativity oftentimes gets stifled in that model, right? You see a lot of layers, you see a lot of swirl, you see a lot of bloat. And, it's hard to get an idea from its original point all the way to producing out in the world without it being watered down or without it being slow. And the reason that independent shops have really risen in the past few years is they're able to move faster. They're able to think in a more scrappy and nimble and effective way. And, these independent shops are able to collect talent that are a bit more focused, right? Like you're able to get people who are really just driven, and you're able to kind of build this small family feeling model where people are just going for the goal. And I think that the rise of the independents has really rocked the industry because it's made everyone realize you don't have to be the biggest shop to do amazing work. Oftentimes some of these smaller agencies like Quality Meats were able to do some amazing work for huge clients, but we're able to do it in a much more efficient way across the board. For us, we call it, we our model is all baked around this idea of we want to get rid of all the bad stuff that gets in the way of getting to the good stuff. And the bad stuff is all the things I talked about, which is the swirl, the bloat, the layers. And the good stuff is just getting to that work in a more efficient way with clients and having better client relationships, having the ability to be more collaborative, having the ability to be more effective and efficient as we think about building work and creative. So it's been such an amazing ride. Don't get me wrong, it also comes with some challenges, right? Like we don't have all the same resources that these big agencies have, right? And I think it creates this very fruitful feeling of you have to kind of wear multiple hats. You kind of have to figure it out. It kind of forces everybody at the agency to feel like they have that entrepreneurial spirit. And I think it creates this set of talent that are just more dynamic and more effective.
I love that. So another thing that I am always a fan of, especially with indie shops, is understanding kind of the brand and the name behind the agency. Generally, the chief marketing officer or the growth person at the agency is kind of the steward of the marketing and the brand of the agency itself. So Quality Meats, tell me a little bit about that. What's the origin story? What does the name come from? But what does the brand of the agency mean to you, and how do you represent that in the marketplace in a way that is lives up to its name, so to speak?
Yeah, there are 14,000 advertising agencies in the US, which is crazy to think about. So everybody has to fight for their slice of pie. And the challenge is everyone's kind of saying the same thing, right? We're gonna use human insights. We're gonna create work that is bold and distinctive, and we're gonna drive results. Like everyone's using that basic formula. And the best agencies, the ones who are rising to the top, have a very clear brand and a very clear narrative. And Quality Meats has done a really good job of being able to be ourselves and just embrace the weird and wacky people that we are, right? Quality Meats, the name is it's like you're going to the local butcher down the street. It's not the big grocery store butcher where they're just gonna give you the $5.99 special, whatever. It's the shop where you're gonna walk in and they're gonna know who you are. And they are going to know kind of what you usually typically buy. And it's a little bit more of that white glove service. It's all about just better connection with our customers, but also it's cutting out all the fat, getting you the best piece of steak, whatever meat you want, and being able to deliver results for you. And really we model everything after this like idea of a butcher shop. And how it comes to life visually is really fun and distinctive. Like if you look at our social media, it's colorful, it's a little bit weird and out there. And if you look at the way that our voice shows up, we know who we are. And we never lose sight of delivering that brand to the marketplace, right? When you're on LinkedIn, you're scrolling through, every agency's celebrating something. Everybody's kind of using the same kind of celebratory basic voice. We always try and approach it with our own voice that is distinctive and unique, and we've never lost sight of that. And I think that's been a big conduit to our success.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think definitely after COVID, how agencies drink their own Kool-Aid or butcher their own cow, so to speak, is I think an important element of agency selection. Is like, okay, well, do these guys actually believe and implement the things that they say? Do they do it themselves? So I love that. All right. So I was scrolling through the headlines the other day. You guys came up. You guys were awarded some Super Bowl work. Would love to hear a little bit about that process. What was it like? Had you worked on a Super Bowl campaign before? But yeah, give me kind of the play-by-play.
Yeah, the Super Bowl is, of course, exciting for anyone who works in advertising. It is the biggest stage, right? You have a very engaged audience at a moment in time where everyone's excited to watch ads, right? You don't get that in any other point in our culture. And we have done Super Bowl work before. We launched a campaign for GoDaddy Aero last year.
That was great work. Yeah,
Hugely
I love
successful campaign. Very,
the
very
Walter Goggins goggle glasses or whatever, or the Gaga glasses.
Yes, Walton
Yeah.
Goggins was an amazing partner in that brand where we essentially launched a very real business that was revealed right around the Super Bowl that it was only possible thanks to GoDaddy Aero, which is their AI tool that allows you to build essentially content and a business on top of the domain that you can secure through them. So small business owners, like the idea, the unspoken truth that we call it an insight here at Quality Meats is all small business owners kind of don't know what they're doing. Like they always kind of feel like they're posturing, they feel that moonlighty effect. And it's a very real truth that really drove that work. And what we achieved was this idea that you can, no matter what level of business acumen you have, you're able to get a domain. It'll build you a website on top of that. It'll build you social content to sell your products. And essentially the campaign was world's longest product demo. It was a very real business that was stood up. It's still alive today. And it was a really fun example of thinking a bit differently, right? It's not about just, okay, here's our ad telling you about GoDaddy Aero, and here's all the functional aspects of it. It's an interesting way to create a real world example with a very relevant cultural presence and demonstrate the power of the product, but do it in a way that captures attention. It's impossible to ignore. So we've done that work before. We love Super Bowl, and we were awarded some Super Bowl work for Manscaped. I can't share too much, but know that the process was a good example of how we like to work with clients throughout a pitch process. We like to show them how we work, and what that is we call it welcome to the sausage making. And we are we're ultra collaborative with our clients. We will pull you into the process more than other agencies. We like clients to feel like they're equal stakeholders in building great ideas and work. The more transparent, the more collaborative you can be with clients throughout the process, the work is better and everybody's more excited. Everyone feels more as a solid unit. And that process was very much an example of that, right? It was several meetings that not only showed who we are as an agency, what our philosophy is, but how we wanted to approach the brand strategically, and then how we delivered on that from an executional standpoint. And we're very excited about the work.
Yeah, I love it. Well, great brand, Manscaped, based down here in San Diego. So excited to see what you guys come up with. I'll be tuning in to see all the fun stuff for sure. So wanted to talk a little bit about just kind of your career. You were mainly on the account side for many years. And I think at the end of the day, the account director, the account relationship is kind of that representation between the client and the agency. And then in the growth role, you're doing that, but you're also kind of building relationships with new brands and kind of, you're a new business steward as well. Do you want to tell me a little bit of how that transition has been, or was that very natural, or just what are your kind of thoughts now being into it for a little bit?
It was quite natural. On the account side, I went from an account intern all the way up to a managing director. And, at that point, when you elevate on the account side, you start to be in the new business meetings where if we win the piece of business, you become the account lead. And I found myself quite good at being able to help craft a story of how do you sell the agency, how do you sell the ideas, but how do you sell the partnership aspect? I've made a career out of being skilled at being able to have real authentic connections with the clients where we are going to get the job done. We're going to deliver for you, but we're going to have fun along the way. And we're going to be so connected that the agency is indispensable to the brand, right? That when you have that level of trust and connection and relationship, that is how business is done. And that's how you keep business. That's how you win business. And, once I got in more of those rooms and I was able to flex that skill and that muscle, it became quite apparent that a new business or growth role was a very intuitive fit for me. So I moved over at Quality Meats to be the head of growth here. And, my account skill set is very much applicable, even though I'm the new business guy, right? I might not be the person who's servicing the account if we win every single day. The idea is still building that relationship. The idea of still looking at a client and saying, hey, we're doing this for you, but we could be doing so much more, right? There's always like using that growth mindset is really important as you think about the process and transition from pitch to current client to a client that we want to expand and grow with.
Is the growth role or the growth function different in creative agencies, would you say, than maybe in the context of other agency service lines like media or, some of the other functions?
I would say it's pretty similar. I think the growth
Yeah.
function is all about how do we take our agency and grow to achieve our goals, right? And sometimes that means we want to win more clients in a certain vertical. That might mean we want to make more money. That might mean we want to work with clients that are of a higher caliber, who have a higher creative acumen, right? The growth function is all about mapping a vision for an agency and saying, here's how we're going to go achieve that and go get that. And that might look a little bit different in the media landscape, but essentially this role is all about somebody who is able to set vision and able to inspire and cheerlead a team to help get there. Advertising is, of course, a team sport. You need a lot of humans to get to that singular idea, that singular direction. But the goal is that this role is the person who helps kind of shepherd that process.
Yeah, I love that. So on the topic of growth, you guys have grown pretty rapidly from the early days, working with major brands now, 2 Super Bowl campaigns under your belt. How do you manage that? How do you manage that growth in a way that is sustainable and keep some of the cultural elements that you talked about and kind of the ethos of the small indie agency kind of spirit alive? How do you do that while scaling?
The wonderful part about Quality Meats is our success has really thrived in the idea of staying small, right? We don't want to be an agency of 150 people. We don't have that goal. That's not our vision that we've set. We have really built an agency off the idea that we want to work with amazing clients who want to do amazing work that's impossible to ignore and really cuts through in culture. But we are very precious about who we work with and the work that goes out the door. So because of that, we are very proud to say that everything in our book that we've ever done has cleared our caliber and our standards of what we believe is strong creative work that those brands deserve. So it attracts those types of clients. It goes into the press, it goes into marketing channels where we're able to get more attention from that. And essentially, we are able to say we want to grow, but we want to grow in the right ways. And for us as an agency, part of our growth story has been we don't want to just take a check. Money is the one of our lower filters or criteria. We're more focused on who's willing to do the work that is really going to be noticed and talked about. We have the stat here at the agency that 86% of brands are either misattributed to another brand or fully ignored. So that means 9 out of every 10 ads that go out into the world are a waste of money. And our goal is to make clients the one of those 10 that people actually care about. So our growth goals here are more focused on how do we find the right client mix, but still keep our team small, because the size of us is like I said earlier, is what drives the success. We're so small that our teams, there's a tight-knit feeling. It feels like a family. We have this shorthand with each other because we understand each other. We can just work so fast. And that has been a huge piece of our success when working with clients.
Tell me a little bit about how you guys, spend time out in the marketplace and try to get brands to notice you and to think about working with Quality Meats over other agencies. What do you guys do to market yourselves?
We're huge lovers of LinkedIn. I think that is probably one of our favorite channels. And I think we've approached it quite differently. Like I said earlier, our voice and the way that we show up and the way that we celebrate our work and our clients and our internal agency news, it stands out and it's different. We use the same advertising methodology. To stand out, you got to be different and you got to be distinct and you have to really break through. So we use LinkedIn as a huge tool to get our name out into the marketplace. We all are also huge lovers of just investing in relationships, right? So much of our business has come from connections or clients we've previously worked on or friends of friends, because ultimately we know that we will deliver a great quality service and great quality product for our clients. And because we have a smaller crew here, and it's really an agency that's consisting of really strong top performers picked from all the holding co's, right? We've pulled together this kind of team of A-listers, these all-stars, if you will. And all of those all-stars have proven themselves to clients in the past, have proven themselves to relationships in the past. And we've really used our Rolodex as a way to help grow with the right types of clients.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm especially interested in, your guys' usage of LinkedIn. LinkedIn has kind of exploded as a actual social platform in the last few years with ways to infiltrate the algorithm, a vertical video strategy, a influencer culture. This podcast is mainly programmed to my 31,000 followers on LinkedIn, so it's the primary platform that I pay attention to as well. It seems like one of the key things that you have to do as an agency or a company is to have like a strong employee engagement strategy. How do you incentivize your team to be kind of all in on the LinkedIn strategy without feeling like you're asking them to do something out of turn or, leveraging their personal brands when it might not be in the job description, so to speak?
I would take that question, elevate a little bit higher in the sense of quality meets as a leadership team. When we are talking to our employees and our teammates, there's such a strong sense of shared vision, right? There's a lot of transparency at this agency. There's no secrets. There's a lot of, hey, here's kind of what's happening at the agency. Here's what our growth goals are. We set really clear goals quarterly, but also annually, and everybody understands those, and they understand their role in participating and getting to those goals. And because we do that, it creates this natural engagement and skin in the game feeling. And I think that's what makes it easier to get that employee engagement, right? I think we are lovers of LinkedIn, and our team is too. And I don't think it's a challenge or a huge hurdle or ask to get people to engage, right? We are very active. Everyone understands the fact that if we are going to all achieve our goals, the more that we can all support the marketing, the more that we can all support the virality of any content, that helps everybody, right? We want all of us to rise together. And I think that the size of our agency has really helped that, because it is tight knit. Everyone that does feel that they're moving toward a shared mission.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I don't think it would be a marketing or an agency podcast if we didn't at least say the words AI. It's top of everybody's thoughts, and iterating every single day. What are you seeing as some of the most exciting ways to deploy AI in kind of the growth role of agency biz dev? I've heard people using it to respond to RFIs, maybe using it for RFP work, maybe using it for, now instead of presenting mood boards, you can actually present, AI ripped commercials as proof of concepts. You can come up with spec work a lot faster and a lot easier with less burden on the core team. What are some of the ways that you're using AI in the new business process at the agency?
Yeah, we use AI and we plug it into our human-based operating system, if you will. And really the idea is to remove more friction from the process to get to the ideas faster, right? And, ultimately, again, going back to our original, quality meets mission statement of getting rid of all the bad stuff that gets in the way of getting to the good stuff. The bad stuff, it's AI really helps, right? It could be as basic as helping us do meeting recaps, helping us synthesize information, helping us do research. It could be a bit more involved creatively, where getting to comps that visualize ideas, it's just faster, right? It's not meant to replace the human generation of idea, but it's able to take an idea that we have birthed and say, oh wait, show this to me visually so that we could sell it to clients and then actually go film and make it. There are some instances, and I think this bucket is going to grow much more in the next few years. But consumer facing assets, how does AI play a role there? Right. I think there's rapid evolution, and as we see the tech and the advancements. But I do think there is going to be a world where starting to figure out where is the right place to use AI. Right. So to give you an example, let's use auto as a vertical. When you shoot commercials for cars, there's some footage that's just basic and kind of hard to shoot, and AI can help. If you're doing running footage of a car driving through a landscape in a mountainscape, and you need a drone to do it, like that is a kind of expensive, hard to shoot thing. But there's no performance in it, right? There's no comedy, there's no human expression. That is something that once AI gets there, if we can replicate that and do that using AI and save clients a few $100,000 of being able to shoot that, awesome, right? So I think we use AI on a case-by-case basis. There is no blanket rule, but we've really embraced it at Quality Meats and tried to find ways to, again, cut out more of that bad stuff.
Yeah, I love that automotive example. I was talking to, a client the other day who said, we might be in a world soon where, you can shoot a car commercial in the desert and then hit a button and then it's in the snow, like it'll be that
Right.
good for some of those, like you said, like more like background, hero shot, B-roll stuff that doesn't require like actors and kind of the human connection, because I feel like that part still, at least in the short term, is going to be hard to fake. But one of the things that I've been reading a lot about is, the idea of like creativity versus efficiency, campaigns that are designed to win awards, but don't really move the needle on business results. Can you share a specific example where you guys have exited a campaign that you were really, really proud of from a production and creativity perspective, but also led to transformational results for the client?
Yeah, I think it's a really fascinating point, because there's a lot of agencies that fall into the trap of, all right, the clients are asking me for 5 product ads, and I'm going to try and convince them to do a 90-second anthem that they don't want or need. And it's beautiful and it's creative, but it doesn't actually do the thing that it needs to do. If we go back to the point of advertising, it's that intersection between business and creativity. The creative has to drive effect. And when you have work that actually works, everybody wins. And at Quality Meats, we've been very clear with clients from day zero that we design around clear business objectives. Like, we're not going to give you a 2-minute film when you need to some social ads, right? There's always a conversation around it. We want to use comms planning to best understand what's the right way to map people and place and message, right? So we're driving efficacy. But I think we have several examples in our portfolio that are very strong cases of being able to do work that we're really proud of, but it's also effective. And I go back to that GoDaddy example that we talked about earlier. It was originally briefed as, all right, this is a Super Bowl spot. And when you think about Super Bowl, typically the objective is mass awareness, right? You're just getting everybody you have such a massive focused audience. It's a great opportunity to bring awareness of maybe a new brand, a new product, a new offering. And, our goal was to, of course, do that. But, it was thinking about, how do we grow the business, and how do we use not only just a Super Bowl ad, but a suite of content and an ecosystem to be able to drive some really, really amazing results. And, the results were very much tracked and measured, and we saw awesome upticks in growth. What's the word I'm looking for? In terms of growth categories and results across the board.
Yeah, what was interesting about that campaign is prior to that campaign, I had been a GoDaddy customer, but I always would go to GoDaddy to register domains, right? It was like when you come up with that business idea in your head and you want to just go get a good domain for it in case you decide to create that business in 2 or 3 years. And I always have, a portfolio of GoDaddy domains that are just kind of sitting there that are ideas that are kind of percolating in the back of my head. But I think prior to that Super Bowl campaign, people always used to think of GoDaddy's where you get the domain, and then you go to Shopify, then you go to Wix, then you go to Squarespace in order to execute the idea. And I think what that campaign did is it really illustrated that no, GoDaddy can be the place that you not just go get the domain for, but you actually launch the business through GoDaddy versus having to take it to one of these other, e-commerce platforms or these other self-serve website companies. Why not do it all in one place? Because it's very frustrating, getting a GoDaddy domain and then trying to have it integrate with these other programs if you're not super technically savvy. So yeah, so good job on that. And then I think the other cool thing too is, Arrow, the tool, like now you can get that, you can kind of get a domain and then Arrow will just spin up a landing page for you. So you kind of have the business is out there. You've at least got a landing page. It's not just sitting there dark. It's you've got these kind of an instant landing page for your idea, for a lack of a better word, which is pretty cool too. All right. So I wanted to also ask you about this idea of kind of data overload. We're at this point in marketing where there just are so many signals, and a lot of times we can have so much data that we don't know what to do with it. But some of the most exciting marketing campaigns that I've seen in recent years are campaigns that actually leverage an insight that was collected through sifting through large amounts of data, and then we're able to turn that into a unique creative idea. Do you guys have an example of a unique insight that was gleaned from data synthesis that you were then able to bring into the creative process and build a campaign around it?
Yeah, we do. You by Kotex is a Kimberly Clark brand that we have worked with in the past, and there was a challenge to essentially figure out how do they join a cultural conversation, right? And we launched this campaign called Period Sex, and it was all really on the backs of this stat that we found that, and I can't remember the exact percentage, so I'm not going to say a number, but there's a percentage. But there's a large percentage of women who just feel ashamed or are scared of approaching that conversation of period sex, especially around Valentine's Day, right? A day that is supposed to be celebrated with love, and a day that is, of course, that type of activity is heightened. Is how do you embrace the idea that it's okay if you're on your period to embrace that? And we created a program where we partner with Fazy and made these libido boosting chocolates that also came in a heart-shaped kit that had some You by Kotex product in it, and it was a way to say enjoy your Valentine's Day and just be who you are, and it's not weird to embrace that and have that conversation. And there were some massive success metrics on the backs of that campaign, and very proud of that work. But it was all really derived from an insight that was driven by a study ran to understand what was the motivator, what is the perception and the posture of women in that topic.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I love that example. So looking forward to the next 12 to 24 months, what do you think the biggest challenges are for independent agencies? We've gone through these cycles of the holdco model where, the agency of one, where brands want to have one point of contact and kind of all of their different disciplines feeding into one organization. We've had kind of the rise of the indie or the specialty shop where I have a agency for my esports business, and I have a agency for my creator marketing, and then I've got an agency for all these kind of live shopping on TikTok, these specialty shops. And then, we also have the consultancies that are continuing to try and, get into the space either through acquisition or by having, excuse me, the relationships that they have with the C-levels and kind of being able to speak the language of the boardroom versus the creative rooms. So, what do you think the state is of independent agency land, and what are some of the challenges that you see over the next few years?
It's a great question, and I think about this every day in my role as head of growth. But I think there's two answers I would share with you. The first is, I think AI is going to cause a little bit of overthink for a lot of people, right? I think brands are going to be challenging agencies to think, all right, AI should be making things more efficient. How are you doing that? I think it's going to cause a little bit of focus and some re-looking at agency models. How are we using that as a tool to drive efficiency? Because at the end of the day, as clients have more and more deliverables and more channels, budgets are still not going up that much, right? So there's this constant scrutinization around monies and budgets, and how do we just drive efficiency but also get the results. So I think that AI will cause a lot of just chatter and make some waves as we think about the agency to client model. I also think the second answer I'd have for you is, I think that longevity with clients is a big threat and challenge, right? There's a lot of agencies or a lot of brands who are moving toward a project model, right? They're doling out projects to a bunch of different shops, and there's some awesome pros to that, but there are some challenges, right? You don't have one agency who's kind of like the master of the information and kind of looking across channels and across programs to say, like, do all these things line up? Or are we really delivering one brand voice? So it's not to say that model can never work. We work in that model all the time. But I do think as time goes on, we're seeing more and more of it. And I think that my advice to both agencies and clients is just really be critical and use a really thorough lens as you think about how you're working on a brand, how you're working with the client, and how are you trying to build a relationship that has longevity, and you're taking knowledge and learnings from one campaign, one program, you're building more energy and momentum with clients and expanding your remit. Because the best case scenario is that clients get the best work possible and the brand is built. That's the ultimate goal. There are a lot of agencies who can do that, but it is helpful to have great partners that you trust, and you're able to really invest in each other and build up that level of rapport and relationship. And it ultimately comes down to the contracts and the scopes and all the things. But I think we're going to see a lot more pressure testing of different ways to do client agency relationships. And I will always push for the focus of longevity and building a real partnership. It's not about transaction. It's not about delivering deliverables. It's about really building that relationship and being able to use that as fuel to get to really amazing work.
Do you think that is in part driven by the continued shortening of CMO tenure, or CMOs now being absorbed into other titles like Chief Growth Officer? Or others like within the brand? It seems like the CMO is a fading title, and even harder to have longevity themselves.
I think it's driven by a few things. I think one, there's a very much procurement cost aspect to this, right? Like, if you are doling out projects to multiple agencies, there's a little bit of bid war happening, right? And I think there's clients who can save a buck. I think there's a little bit of, some brands are just so big, it's hard to give an account to an agency at a certain size and have them structure it all, and you're like locked in with an agency doing everything. So it makes sense for them to kind of dole it out to multiple shops. I think there's also just a little bit of, as we've seen a lot more movement in the industry, especially at the CMO level, when people move, they're still humans with real relationships. And there's very much a desire to work with people that you trust and that you like and enjoy and will deliver. So I think that part of the agency roster model is also largely driven by the fact that when people move, sometimes they want to give their old colleagues a shot. right? And I think it's certainly not wrong. I totally understand the moves and the game of it all. It's just it has to all be within reason.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. All right, that was awesome, man. I really appreciate you popping on and talking to me a little bit through what you're up to these days, and especially the Super Bowl campaign. We'll all be tuning in to see what the new work looks like with Manscaped. Meantime, would you like to point the audience to connect with you personally or learn more about Quality Meats?
Yeah, well, you hit me up on LinkedIn, and would love to chat. I'm a big fan of just being in the industry, being amongst our people, and supporting each other however we can. QualityMeatsCreative.com is where you can check out some of our work. But very appreciative of your time and excited to be here, Dylan.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Well, for those of you who are following along at home, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a follow or subscribe wherever you happen to be watching. If you're listening, an honest review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to gets us out to a larger audience. And most importantly, if there's somebody out there in agency land, maybe somebody at a holding company who's looking to make the move to an indie shop like John has done, or maybe somebody who's got an upcoming idea for a Super Bowl campaign, or just wants to learn a little bit from my conversation that I had with Jonathan tonight, don't forget to share the show. And with that, I know it's late in Chicago. I will let you go.